Nowadays, everyone seems to go on about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I've got to be honest, I'm more interested in the Wes Anderson Cinematic Universe. The French Dispatch. Now, The French Dispatch is a new film directed by Wes Anderson and honestly has one of the biggest cast ensembles for a film, period. Honestly, the cast for this film is insane. And basically, the film follows the story of this fictional newspaper known as the French Dispatch. And basically, throughout the film, we follow all these different stories which are written about in the newspaper known as the French Dispatch. And I can go into these stories and things like that, but I'm not going to, because honestly, there's so many stories, there's so many like mini storylines, there's so many big storylines that go on throughout the film that it would take me about 10 minutes to fully explain it. So I'm not going to really explain the stories that you see in the film, but you see a lot of stories in the film. That's all I'm going to say. And honestly, this film is Wes Anderson on another level. This is the most Wes Anderson film I've ever seen. And you know what? I actually kind of like it. I think it's a good film. I do. I quite enjoy this film, I've got to admit that. And the thing is though, it's not going to be for everyone. Honestly, this film is very postmodern, and at the same time though, it's very arty, and it's got some slow moments in there, and it's quite complex in some moments. So complex, I haven't actually got my head around the whole plot of the film yet. But at the same time though, it kind of worked to me, I've got to admit, and maybe it worked to me because I'm a bit of a Wes Anderson fan. Like, if you didn't know already, over the past year or so, I've been acquainted myself with, you know, all the Wes Anderson films, nearly all of these films, actually. I think the only one I haven't seen is Isles of Dogs, but apart from that, I think I've seen all of these films, and some I like quite a lot, some I'm not the biggest fan of, but others I think are great. And I've got to admit, I think The French Dispatch fits into that category of a great Wes Anderson film. Like, I do think it's got some big problems in there. I do think there's some weird moments of nudity in there which aren't really needed, I've got to admit. And at the same time, no, I do think sometimes, like, one of the producers of this film needs to come up to Wes Anderson and just go, you know, Wes, just tone it down a little bit. Because honestly, there's so much Wes Anderson going on the screen in so many moments in the film, and I like Wes Anderson's direction. Honestly, I think he's an absolutely fantastic director, and I'll be getting onto that quite shortly in this review. But the thing is though, just sometimes you want the directors, you know, to come up with Wes Anderson to go, just tone it down a little bit, because this is a bit too postmodern and a bit too arty. And at the same time though, I do think there's going to be a lot of people who don't like this film, and that's fine. It is a bit complex in its storylines, and I also don't think it has the emotional punch that some of the best Wes Anderson films do, in my opinion. Like, honestly, one of my favourite Wes Anderson films is The Darjeeling Limited, because of the amount of emotional punch of the film, which just make me absolutely love it. And at the same time though, that's one of the reasons I like The Life Aquatic with Seydoux so much, because of the big emotional punch in the film. Same with The Grand Budapest Hotel, and same with The Royal Tenenbaums. In fact, The Royal Tenenbaums have got some absolutely fantastic emotional moments. But the thing is though, I'd probably rate The French Dispatch on the same level as Moonrise Kingdom. In terms, I do think it's one of the weak Wes Anderson films, but at the same time though, I still think it's great. I just think it's one of the weak Wes Anderson films because it doesn't have that big emotional punch. You've got emotional moments in this film, but it doesn't have that big emotional punch that you go, wow, I didn't see that come in, and you know what? I absolutely love that. Like I have with The Life Aquatic, and like I had with, you know, The Royal Tenenbaums, I didn't have that with this film. And at the same time, though, I don't think it's got the wit of The Grand Budapest Hotel or the wit of Rushmore. But nevertheless, it does have its quirkiness to it, and I do think it's actually quite charming and fun to watch. Even in some moments, it is a bit confusing, though. Like, I've got to admit, I've got to go back and rewatch this film again to really get my head around it. And, you know, I probably won't do another video on this film, but I've just got to admit, there's so much going on in so many scenes, and the attention to detail is incredible. It's incredible, the attention to detail in the film. And just sometimes you do kind of want to go, okay, just give me a sec so I can, you know, pause it and get all the gags that are going on in the scene, and also to really understand what's going on in the plot, because sometimes there's so much information thrown at you once, and, you know, it's all really good, and I'm really enjoying the story, but I just didn't get what was really going on in every single scene, I've got to admit that. But nevertheless, I enjoyed watching it. You know, this film is almost 2 hours, and it did not feel like that. It felt like an hour and a half, and I sat there with a grin on my face through most of the film. You know, quite a lot of the gags did land for me, quite a lot of the jokes did land for me. Not all of them did, like they have done with Wes Anderson films in the past, but actually, you know, most of Wes Anderson type humor film, which isn't, you know, your typical normal humor, which you normally get from like rubbish American comedy nowadays. No, it's Wes Anderson humor. And if you've seen Wes Anderson film before, like Grand Budapest Hotel, Rushmore, or Tenenbaums, and so on and so on and so on, you understand what sort of humor that is like. You know, it's not your typical humor, and that's what we like about this film. But at the same time, no, just some of these jokes didn't work for me straight away in the film. I just got to admit, I haven't really gotten my head around all the gags in this film. But saying that though, I love the way it's directed. Honestly, I think the direction of the film is brilliant. I'm in awe of Wes Anderson's direction, because he's like no other director working today. He's like no other director working today, and in the best way possible, in my opinion. Honestly, I love the fact that all these other directors do like big action blockbusters, which can be good, by the way. I'm not saying they can be bad, but I love the fact you got all these big action blockbusters nowadays, which are like big and exciting and can be really fun to watch. But then you get some like a Wes Anderson film, which doesn't have those big action set pieces in, and instead it's just a bit more toned down, and actually it's just really fun to watch. And basically, like 2 hours in a Wes Anderson film, you sit there and you're immersed into the world of Wes Anderson, and that's how I felt the French Dispatch. Even so, I didn't fully understand what was going on quite a lot of the film. I was just immersed into the world because it was Wes Anderson. I've seen so many Wes Anderson films before, and this film just reminded me of some of his best work from the past. Like, there's moments in the film which remind me of the Grand Budapest Hotel, moments which remind me of, you know, Life of Classic with Steve Zissou, moments which remind me of Rushmore, moments which remind me of the World Tenenbaums, moments which remind me of, what's this one that I'm trying to think of that I can't think of the top of my head right now, what is it? Darjeeling Limited, there you go. There's so many moments in the film which just remind me of so many previous Wes Anderson films I've seen and I really liked, and actually watching all those previous Wes Anderson films made me like this one more, and I can completely understand why a non-Wes Anderson fan might not really like this film. But in the end though, because I've seen so many Wes Anderson films in the past and I really enjoyed them, I did kind of sit there in the film going, okay, that's some of the Warren Tenenbaums, that's some of the Grand Budapest Hotel, that's some of the Rushmore, that's some of the Life Quest with Steve Zissou, and so on and so on and so on. There's so many moments like that, and that all brought a smile to my face in the end. I sat there in all this direction, because, you know, it's like no other director coming today, and I think that's brilliant. I just love the fact that I've seen all these films recently, which are all really well directed and things like that. You know, I've seen so many films recently, which are really well directed, but they all have a certain similar direction to them, but no one compares to Wes Anderson, and the best way possible, in my opinion. And at the same time, no, performances are all great. You know, I really enjoy all performances of Wes Anderson films. Even actors, which I don't usually like, outside of Wes Anderson films, are great at Wes Anderson films. Like, say, I don't know, Owen Wilson, he's back here and he's great in that. And actually, he's doing his very, you know, typical Wes Anderson, Owen Wilson performance. If you've seen Owen Wilson in a Wes Anderson film before, you know exactly what I mean there. You know, Bill Murray's back again here, he's been in loads of Wes Anderson films. McDormand is really fun to watch as well. Tilda Swinton's really fun to watch. And at the same time, though, I could go on and on. You know, Benicio del Toro's wonderful to watch in the film, so glad to do. And honestly, there's so many great performances. And at the same time, though, you know, Timothée Chalamet pops up in the film. He's really fun to watch. And actually, it did feel like Timothée Chalamet was actually doing, you know, his best Owen Wilson impression. He felt like he was trying to do an Owen Wilson impression there. And not in a bad way. And funny enough, Owen Wilson is actually in this film, so it's a bit ironic there. But yeah, you know, Timothée Chalamet, I don't know, it just kind of felt like he was doing his best Owen Wilson impression in this film. That's what it felt like he was trying to do. And at the same time, some of the performances I've mentioned, you know, Adrien Brody's wonderful in this film. So is Jeffrey Wright, he's great in there. And at the same time, the Fonz, you know, himself, Henry Winkler's in the film, and he's wonderful. So is Bob Balaban, and so on, and so on, and so on. Honestly, the amount of famous faces that pop in the film is ridiculous. And actually, on the topic of that, that's kind of one of my small criticisms of this film, and one of my criticisms to Wes Anderson films as a whole. Like, it is a criticism to this film and many of Wes Anderson films as well, because, you know, they have absolutely fantastic and huge casts, and sometimes you kind of sit there and go, oh, that's Edward Norton, oh, that's Bill Murray, oh, that's Tilda Swinton, oh, that's Adrien Brody, oh, that's Bob Balaban, oh, that's such and such body, and on and on and on and on. And honestly, that did happen a bit in the film, because honestly, the huge cast, and sometimes it'd be like, okay, that's another famous person, okay, that's another famous person, okay, that's another famous person, and that did happen with this film, and sometimes it did take my mind away from the story, the amount of famous people in this film. Honestly, it did take my mind a bit away from what was going on, because honestly, the amount of famous actors that pop in the film is ridiculous, and sometimes it's like, okay, I don't see the character there, I just see Edward Norton, or I just see Saoirse Ronan, or something like that, and that's kind of how I felt through parts of the film. But that's not just a criticism of the French Dispatch, that's a criticism of a lot of Wes Anderson films. Although saying that, I can watch Wes Anderson film like The Life of Christ with Steve Zissou and not see Bill Murray and Owen Wilson in that film, or Jeff Goldblum. I can watch a film like that and go, oh, you know what, I don't see the actors, I just see the characters. However, I've got to admit, with the French Dispatch, it was a bit like, okay, that's another famous actor, wow. I can't believe the amount of famous actors in the film. You know, Willem Dafoe's even in a award stage, and that surprised me, because I was like, Willem Dafoe's there, wow, that's quite a lot in the film. And you know what, I'm not surprised at all, because of the huge cast of the film, and sometimes it does take your head away from the plot that's going on, because you're trying to get your head around the huge cast of the film. But actually, in the long run, that didn't really bother me so much, and actually, if I go back and watch it now, maybe I'll see the characters instead of the actors, but you can admit, on the first watch, it was kind of overwhelming, the amount of famous actors in the film. And actually, going back onto Wes Anderson's direction, this film feels like a live-action cartoon. Honestly, there's so many two-dimensional moments, and at the same time, though, shots in film will quite literally change colour. I might get a black and white shot, which you might mind, silent cinema, with George Méliès and so on and so on. But at the same time, though, then it might cut to a really colourful shot, which is so vibrant and so fantastic to look at, and then it cuts back to a black and white shot. Honestly, it's like reading a comic strip, or like reading a cartoon strip in one of those magazines you used to get back in the day. Honestly, it's like reading Tintin, one of the Tintin comic books, or one of the Tintin cartoons you used to get back in the day. I must admit, I didn't really used to read them, but I know about the Tintin animation back in the day. You used to get like magazines and things like that. And on the topic of Tintin, there's one sequence in particular which quite literally looks like they took it out of one of the early Tintin cartoons from back in the day. That's not even a joke. There's one sequence in particular which is actually like a car chase, which is done in such a fantastic way. Honestly, one of the best car chases I've seen in the cinema for a very long time. And there's one sequence in particular which quite literally looks like being taken out of one of those Tintin cartoons. And honestly, I just sat there with a huge grin on my face. The fact that it went from live action to a complete cartoon animated strip section of the film, and that's what it felt like. And honestly, I really liked this film, and it's just so wonderful. I also think the musical score by Alexandre Desplat is brilliant in this film. I really like it. I really like the soundtrack as a whole as well, because not only does it have a fantastic score by Alexandre Desplat in there, but at the same time though, it's also got other fantastic music from people like Ennio Morricone in there, which just works so well. Honestly, I just thought it was wonderful to watch, and I really enjoyed it. Even so, I do have my problems with it, and I do think it's a bit too postmodern, and it has a complex story, and I haven't quite wrapped my head around it yet. Even so, I do have my problems with it. I've got to admit, I enjoyed watching it though. That's what I take from the French Dispatch overall. I enjoyed it. I found it charming, I found it witty, and I found it entertaining. And I never felt bored in this film. Even if I did feel a bit confused at some parts, I never felt bored, and I had a huge grin on my face through so much of this film. And, I can clearly see why non-Wes Anderson fans wouldn't enjoy this film. But for me personally, after watching so many Wes Anderson films in the past, which I also reviewed on this channel by the way, go and check them out if you haven't already, but after reviewing so many other Wes Anderson films in the past, this one worked for me because it reminded me of some of his early works in such a good way. And honestly, it's Wes Anderson on another level. But you know what? That kind of worked for me, and I really enjoyed it overall. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that the French Dispatch, I'm going to say that's a 7.8 out of 10. Honestly, I enjoyed it. And I know I've said that before, but I'm going to say it again. I did enjoy it. Even so, I do have some problems with it. I do have some big problems in there. Like, I do think there's some weird moments of nudity in there, which just weren't needed, I got to admit. And at the same time, no, like I said before, it does feel, in some parts, like you want the producer to go to Wes Anderson to go, just tone it down a little bit, because this is very artsy and very Wes Anderson. But actually, funny enough, looking back at it, that kind of works for me. Maybe if I go watch it the second time, maybe I'll like it a lot more, or maybe I'll like it a lot less. Honestly, I think I'm going to like it a lot more if I go back and rewatch it a second time. But I won't make another video, by the way. But I'm just saying, if I go back and rewatch it a second time, I feel I'm going to really like it. And even so, I don't think it's on the same par as, say, the Royal Tenenbaums, or say Rushmore, or say the Grand Budapest Hotel, which in my opinion is some of the best Wes Anderson films, or the Darjeeling Limited, or the Life Aquatic, and so on. Even so, I don't think it's quite on the same par as some of Wes Anderson's best films. I do still really like it. In fact, I put on the same par as, Moonrise Kingdom, which I do think is one of the weak Wes Anderson films, but at the same time, no, that's saying something, because I still think Moonrise Kingdom is a wonderful and really enjoyable film, and that's also how I feel about the French Dispatch. I think it's great, I think it's a lot of fun, and I think, for me personally, as a bit of Wes Anderson fan, I enjoyed it quite a lot. However, I can clearly tell where someone who's not a Wes Anderson fan may not take this film the same way I did, but I'm just going to be honest here. I took to it, I enjoyed it, and I just sat there, slightly confused, but with a huge grin on my face, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was wonderful, quirky, witty, and charming, and it felt like a Wes Anderson film in the best way possible, in my opinion. And you know what? I definitely want to go back and check it out again, because actually, I think I'm going to like it a lot more. But for now, I really enjoyed it, and personally, as a bit of Wes Anderson fan myself, this film works for me. And you know what? That's what I take from the French Dispatch overall. And so, all in all, I'm going to take the French Dispatch. I'm going to say that it's a 7.8 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of the French Dispatch? Please do comment down below and know your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like subscribe on this video, and look forward to many more both film and TV reviews coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, bye bye for now, bye!